Welcome to Alien Shadow. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. For thrilling HFY adventures, join us and be part of the journey. The Human in Chains. The throne room was cold, colder than the night outside. The walls were made of black crystal that seemed to drink the light, and the air was thick with silence. Only the sound of armored boots echoed as two alien guards dragged a man forward, heavy chains clinking with each step. The alien queen sat high on her throne. Her eyes were sharp like blades, glowing faintly with a golden fire. Her long cloak spread over the steps like a river of darkness. She was a ruler, feared across 10 star systems. No one spoke against her. No one dared. The man the guards brought in was different. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, but his back was straight. His eyes were calm, too calm for someone standing before the most feared ruler in the galaxy. Most prisoners trembled when they entered this room. Many cried or begged for mercy, but this man simply looked at her as if she were just another person. The queen tilted her head, studying him. Her voice was smooth yet cold. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. The man nodded. "I do," he said, "and I'm not afraid." The room seemed to grow even colder. The guards shifted uncomfortably. No one had ever spoken to her like that. "You will be," she said softly. Her words had made warriors faint before, but the human only smiled faintly. "You'll have to do better than that," he replied. The queen leaned forward on her throne, her golden crown catching the dim light. She could feel the eyes of her court watching, waiting for her to crush this man like she had crushed so many before. She rose slowly from her seat. Every step she took down the stairs echoed like thunder. She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the scars on his face. "Do you know what happens to those who defy me?" she asked. Her tone was almost gentle, but it carried a blade beneath. "They die," the man said calmly, "but only after they break." Queen's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. She circled him like a predator studying its prey. "And you believe you will not break?" she asked. He met her gaze without flinching. No, I won't." That answer stirred something deep in her, a mix of annoyance and curiosity. She had ruled for years through fear, breaking even the strongest. Her power rested on the fact that no one could resist her. Yet here stood a human, small in her eyes compared to her warriors, daring to claim she could not break him. She turned to her court. "Take him to the Hall of Trials," she ordered. A murmur went through the room. The Hall of Trials was not a place of mercy. It was a vast underground arena filled with traps, beasts, and puzzles meant to crush body and spirit. No one had survived it, not in her reign. The guards tightened their grip on his chains, dragging him toward the great doors at the end of the hall. The man did not fight, did not shout. He only glanced over his shoulder once, meeting the queen's eyes. There was no fear there, only a quiet challenge. As the doors closed behind him, the queen returned to her throne. Her heart beat little faster than usual. She told herself it was nothing, just the thrill of watching another fool be destroyed. But deep down she knew something was different this time. She had the strange feeling that this man's story would not end in the Hall of Trials. The air in the throne room seemed heavier after he was gone. Her advisors whispered among themselves. Some urged her to execute him quickly before he became a problem. Others said he might be useful as a bargaining piece, but the queen was silent. Her mind was already on the next day when she would watch him face the trials. That night, as she stood on the balcony overlooking the city of black spires, she thought again of his eyes. There had been no trembling in them, no begging, no defeat. It was as if he had already decided the outcome before even stepping into her world. That unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Far below, the streets of her capital glowed with cold blue lights. Ships drifted like silent shadows in the sky. Her rule felt as solid as ever, yet one human, bound in chains, had placed a small crack in it, and cracks she knew could grow. She whispered to herself, "We'll see how long you last, human." Then she turned and walked back inside, her cloak sweeping the floor like the shadow of a storm. Somewhere deep beneath the palace, the man in chains was thrown into a dark cell to await the trials. But instead of resting, he sat in the corner, his eyes half closed, as if already planning his next move. The guards who locked the door swore they saw him smile in the dark, and in the silence of the cell, the human whispered something only he could hear. "Tomorrow the real game begins." The Hall of Trials. The morning came without sunlight. In the deepest part of the palace, a heavy door of black steel opened with a deep groan. The human was dragged out by two guards, his wrists still bound in cold metal. The air here was damp and carried a strange smell, a mix of dust, oil, and blood. The queen stood on a high balcony above the great arena. Her throne had been brought here for her personal view. She watched as the man was led to the center. The Hall of Trials spread out before him, a vast underground space filled with shifting platforms, walls that moved like living stone, pools of dark liquid, and creatures lurking in the shadows. The audience was made of her most loyal warriors and advisors. They whispered and laughed, placing bets on how fast the human would fall. Some said 5 minutes, some said less. No one expected him to survive long enough to see the far gate. A loud horn echoed, and the chains on his wrists fell away. The first trial began. The floor beneath him suddenly split, wide cracks opening like jaws. Massive stone slabs began to shift and tilt, threatening to drop him into the black pit below. The man did not run in panic like others before him. He studied the moving stones, waiting for the right moment. Then with careful steps he leapt from one to another, using balance instead of speed. His movements were calm, precise. He reached the other side just as the last slab gave way, falling into the darkness with a heavy crash. The queen leaned forward slightly, her golden eyes narrowed. She had seen speed and strength before, but this was patience and thought. It was rare. The second trial began without warning. From the shadows, a set of metal spears shot out of the walls, swinging like pendulums. Each carried a sharp edge that could cut through bone. The man crouched low, watching their rhythm. He stepped between them with the same calm as before, ducking and weaving. In perfect time, the crowd grew quieter. Their laughter faded into murmurs. Queen said nothing, but her hand gripped the armrest of her throne a little tighter. The third trial brought him face to face with something far worse. Massive beast with black scales, 4 burning eyes, and teeth like jagged swords. It hissed, the sound shaking the ground. Most warriors who entered this chamber died here, torn apart before taking even 2 steps, but the human did not raise his fists. He did not even pick up the sword lying on the ground. Instead, he stood still, his eyes locked on the beast. Slowly, he moved one hand to his chest, pressing it there. He spoke in a low voice, words no one in the crowd could understand. The beast stopped, tilting its head. Its hiss faded into a slow, strange rumble. Then, to the shock of everyone watching, it stepped aside, letting the man walk past unharmed. Gasps filled the hall. The queen rose from her throne, her expression unreadable. "What did you do to it?" she called down. Her voice echoed through the chamber. The man glanced up, his face calm. "I just reminded it of something older than fear," he said. Then he walked on, disappearing through the final gate. The horn sounded again, marking the end of the trials. The impossible had happened. A human had survived untouched. The guards moved to escort him back, but they no longer dragged him. They walked beside him, glancing at him with something almost like respect. From her balcony, the queen watched him go. Her mind was a storm. For the first time in years, her belief in her own unbreakable power felt uncertain. She wanted to know more, needed to know more. As he vanished into the shadows of the corridor, she whispered to herself, "You are not like the others." The queen's question. The palace was quieter than usual that night. The whispers of the hall of trials had spread through every corridor, from the lowest servant to the highest commander. A human had survived. And not just survived, he had walked out without a scratch. That had never happened in the queen's reign. In her private chamber, the alien queen stood by a tall window of black glass, looking out at the endless city lights. Her reflection stared back at her. The golden crown, the sharp eyes, the cold mask she had worn for years. Yet behind that mask, her mind was restless. She had broken warlords, assassins, even rebel leaders who swore they would never bow. But this man, he had faced death and simply stepped past it. He had tamed a beast with nothing but words. He had turned the hall of trials into a walk through the garden. She could not sleep. And so, in the deepest hour of the night, she descended to the holding cells. The guards straightened as she passed, pressing their fists to their chests in silent salute. When she reached the human cell, she dismissed them with a single wave. Inside, the cell was dim, lit only by a strip of pale blue light. The man sat cross-legged in the corner, as calm as if he were resting by a campfire. He looked up when she entered, not surprised to see her, as if he had been expecting this visit. "You should be dead," the queen said, her voice low. The man tilted his head slightly. "Many should be," he replied, "but here we are." She stepped closer, her cloak trailing across the cold floor. "What did you say to the beast?" she asked. Her tone was not the command of a ruler. It was the question of someone who needed to know. He studied her for a moment before answering. "Fear is a chain, queen," he said slowly. "But chains can be broken, even the ones you've built here." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I rule only by fear?" she asked. He gave a faint smile. "I know you do." Those words cut deeper than any blade, because somewhere in her heart she knew they were true. Her power had been built on fear. Fear of punishment, fear of loss, fear of her wrath. And this man had walked into her world without carrying any of it. "What are you really here for, human?" she asked, trying to sound cold again. But his answer was simple: to see if the queen can be broken. Her fingers twitched at her side, and for a moment she considered ending him. Right there, but instead she found herself laughing, a short, sharp sound. "You are bold," she said, "and foolish." He looked around the cell and then back at her. "Maybe, but you're here now in the middle of the night asking me questions," he said. "So tell me, Queen, who is really chasing who?" She froze, realizing that he was right. She had come to him, not the other way around. She had survived wars without doubt, but this human had placed one in her mind in less than a day. She stepped back toward the door, her face once again the mask of a ruler. "You will stay here," she said, "but not for long." As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of something on the floor beside him. It was a small, strange object made of metal scraps, wires and crystal pieces, something he had been quietly building in the shadows. She stopped. "What is that?" she asked sharply. The man just smiled. "Something you'll see soon enough." For the first time in years, the Queen felt a strange chill in her spine, not from fear of him, but from the thought that maybe, just maybe, she had underestimated the human, the offer. The next day, the Queen summoned no court, held no trials, and met no advisors. Her mind was fixed on the human in the cell and the strange device he was building. She told herself it was nothing, just scraps, but deep inside a quiet unease kept whispering. She descended into the dungeon again. This time she did not send away the guards. She wanted them to see what happened. When the door slid open, the man was still sitting cross-legged, the half-built device resting in front of him. She stepped inside, the light from the corridor cutting across the floor. "You've been busy," she said, nodding toward the object. He didn't stop working, his fingers moving with patient care. "Busy keeps the mind alive," he replied. The Queen moved closer, crouching to look at it. Up close, she saw tiny crystal nodes, thin wires taken from the cell's lighting system, and fragments of alien metal only found her palace. It was no random toy. He was building something with purpose. "What is it?" she asked. He glanced at her with calm eyes. "It's a key," he said. Her brow furrowed. "A key to what?" His smile was faint but steady. "To what comes next." The guard shifted uneasily at his words, but the Queen raised a hand to silence them. "I could order you to stop," she said. "I could destroy it right now." The man shrugged. "You could, but then you'd never know what it opens." That simple line stayed in the air like a hook. She hated that she wanted to know. She hated even more that he knew she wanted to know. Finally she straightened and said, "Work for me." Her voice was firm, the same tone she used when offering generals their position. "Build for me and I will give you anything within my power: food, freedom, even wealth beyond your imagination." He looked at her as if measuring the truth behind her words. Then he shook his head. "I'm not here for your gold, Queen." Her tone hardened. "Then what do you want?" His answer came without hesitation: "To change the way you rule." The silence after that was heavier than stone. The guards glanced at each other, unsure if they should strike him down. But the Queen did not give the order. Instead, she stepped back, eyes narrowed. "You think you can change me?" she asked. "I know I can," he replied, calm as always. Before she could answer, the deep rumbling sound of an alarm shook the dungeon. Red light spilled through the corridor as a voice shouted from above, "Rebel forces at the outer walls." The Queen's gaze locked on the human. He simply sat still, waiting. She turned sharply to the guards. "Bring him," she ordered. The guards hesitated. "My queen, he is dangerous." But she cut them off. "Not as dangerous as what's coming." Moments later, the humans stood beside her in the war hall. As battle reports came in, enemy ships had broken through the defense ring. Her generals warned that the city would fall within hours. She turned to him, her golden eyes burning. "Fight for me, human, and I will give you what you truly want." He looked at her for a long moment before answering, "If I fight, Queen, things will change." She didn't know if it was a warning or a promise, but either way she nodded. "Then let them." Forced alliance. The war hall shook with the sound of distant explosions. The walls seemed to hum with the vibration of battle. Outside the city's great defense towers spat streaks of fire into the black sky. But the enemy kept coming. Saw Queen stood in her armor, black plates trimmed with gold, her crown replaced by a battle helm. Beside her the human wore no armor at all, only the same torn clothes he had been captured in. His calm expression had not changed, even with war at the gates. The generals frowned at him, one of them stepping forward. "My queen, you cannot trust him." But she silenced them with a glare. "He will fight," she said, "and he will fight with me." The great gates of the palace burst open, and the two of them stepped into the chaos. The streets were filled with smoke and shouts. Rebel soldiers in dark armor clashed with her guards. Air stank of burning metal and blood. The queen moved like a storm, her blade flashing with deadly precision. Each strike was clean, each movement the result of years of battle. She had always fought with the certainty that her enemies feared her, but as she fought beside the human, she saw something different. He did not fight like a man trying to kill, he fought like a man trying to protect. His steps placed him between civilians and danger. His strikes disarmed more than they destroyed, and when he knocked an enemy to the ground, he spared them at first. Her warriors looked at him with confusion, then they began to mirror his movements, pulling wounded comrades to safety instead of chasing kills. Strange rhythm formed in the chaos, not the usual march of fear, but something like unity. The rebels began to falter, not because they feared death, but because they faced an enemy who would not slaughter them. The queen noticed it too. The battlefield felt different. She turned to him between clashes. "Why do you fight this way?" she demanded. He blocked an incoming strike before answering. Fear wins quickly, but it never lasts. Courage lasts forever. Her breath caught for a moment, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of his words. In her entire reign, she had never thought of power that way. An enemy commander appeared ahead, towering alien with a blade the size of a door. The queen stepped forward to face him, but the human stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Not this time," he said, and walked toward the giant. Commander roared and swung, but the human moved like water, slipping past each strike. He struck once, not to kill, but to knock the weapon from the commander's hands. Then he offered his hand to help the enemy up. The commander hesitated, then took it, lowering head in respect. The queen watched, stunned, as the man who should have been her sworn enemy now followed the humans' orders to retreat, calling his soldiers with him. When the last of the rebels pulled back, the city stood battered, but still standing. Her guards cheered, but the queen did not. She was looking at the human with a strange new awareness, not just as a fighter, but as Something far more dangerous. You've won me a battle, she said quietly, but you've also changed my soldiers. He met her gaze, his calm never breaking. I told you, Queen, if I fight, things will change. The truth revealed. The palace was quiet after the battle. The fires in the city still burned in the distance, sending thin black smoke. Into the night sky, the Queen stood on her balcony, the golden glow of the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Behind her, the human entered silently. The guards had let him pass without question, something that would have been unthinkable only a day ago. He stopped a few steps away, his hands loose at his sides. You saved my city, the Queen said without turning. Her voice carried neither warmth nor cold, only a question hiding beneath the words. Why? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the sprawling city, the black spires, the shimmering bridges. Because your people are worth saving, he said. Finally, she turned to face him, her gaze sharp. You speak as if you know them. He nodded. I do more than you think. Her crown caught the faint moonlight as she stepped closer. Tell me, human, who are you really? He took a deep breath as if weighing how much truth to give. Then his voice came steady. I was sent here not to kill you, but to break something far stronger, the fear you have built. Her eyes narrowed. By whom? She demanded. He shook his head. That doesn't matter. What matters is that every life you rule belongs to you. Only because they're afraid, I'm here to show them they don't have to be. Words struck her like a blade she could not see. For years she had told herself her rule was necessary, that fear kept order, that without her iron hand the galaxy would burn. But in the last battle she had seen something she could not deny. Her soldiers fought better when they fought for each other, not out of fear of her. She turned away, walking to the edge of the balcony. And if I don't change, she asked quietly. He stepped forward until he stood beside her. Then you will be overthrown. Not by me, but by the people you believe you own. The silence that followed was heavier than any chain. The Queen gripped the railing, staring down at the streets below. She could see faces, tired, scarred, but alive. Some of them were even smiling after the battle, and she knew why. It wasn't because she had commanded it, it was because of him. She turned back to him, her voice lower now. You speak as if you've already won. He met her gaze without a hint of arrogance. I don't need to win, Queen. I only need you to see the truth. Her jaw tightened. The truth was the most dangerous thing she had ever faced, more dangerous than any army, and yet for the first time in her reign, she didn't know if she wanted to fight it. The Queen who chose freedom. The throne room was empty. No court, no guards, no audience. Only the Queen sat on the great black crystal throne, the weight of her crown pressing heavier than it ever had before. The silence was thick, broken only by the slow, steady beat of her heart. Her hands rested on the armrests, but her mind was far from the throne. It wandered to the battlefield, to the faces of her soldiers fighting with courage instead of fear, to the beast in the hall of trials that had bowed instead of attacked, to the human who had stood in chains yet never once looked away. For years she had believed fear was the strongest weapon. It had kept her empire together, crushed rebellions, and made her name a shadow that followed people, even in their dreams. But now she understood fear only chained. It never bound hearts. The heavy doors creaked open and the human stepped inside. He walked without guards, without chains. And yet the air seemed to shift around him as if the whole palace had accepted him. He stopped at the foot of the steps, looking up at her. "You've been thinking," he said. She gave a faint smile. "You're not as difficult to read as you believe." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she reached up, her fingers curling around the golden crown. Slowly she lifted it from her head. The sound of metal against her hair seemed louder than the distant hum of the city. She rose from the throne and descended the steps. Each step felt lighter than the one before. At the bottom she held out the crown to him, but he shook his head. "It's not mine to take." She turned to the open doors of the throne room, and with a sudden motion she let the crown fall. It rolled across the black crystal floor and came to rest. The shadows. "It's not mine anymore either," she said. The human's eyes held no triumph, only quiet respect. "What will you do now?" he asked. She looked toward the city. Her city. "Lead, but not through fear," she said. "I will give them back what I took, their voice, their choice." They walked together to the balcony. The wind carried the sounds of the streets, the voices of people who were no longer whispering but speaking openly. As the first light of dawn broke across the spires, she spoke softly. "You didn't just save my people, human. You saved me." He gave a faint smile, turning to leave. "Then my work here is done." She watched him go, his figure growing smaller until it vanished into the morning light. And for the first time in her life, the queen felt no need to be feared, only to be followed.